All right, so are you ready to like really kind of dig into what it takes to make it on YouTube in 2024? We're going to be going deep on advice from Ali Abdaal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the productivity guy.
Yeah.
Millions of subscribers.
Right, yeah.
And we're not just going to like, scratch the surface here.
Yeah.
This is about really understanding how he thinks about YouTube.
Yeah, the mindset.
Yeah, the strategies that he uses to grow this amazing channel.
Yeah, what I find really interesting about Abdaal's approach is that he kind of like doesn't jump right into tactics.
Right.
He actually starts with asking you to think about, your relationship with YouTube. And he has this framework of 3 levels.
Okay.
Get going, get good, and get smart.
So it's like before you even think about hitting record, you have to figure out like, what do I want out of this whole YouTube thing?
Exactly. Get going is all about just experimenting, have fun, create content. Don't get too hung up on like finding your niche right away. And then you move into get good, where you're starting to refine your skills, you're finding your style, you're getting more comfortable on camera.
It makes sense, right? Like you don't just walk into the gym and try to bench press like 300 pounds.
Right.
Got to kind of build up to that.
Exactly. And, and as you're building up somewhere between get going and get good is where Abdaal says you kind of got to decide like, is this a casual fling with YouTube or am I ready for a committed relationship?
He uses the dating analogy, doesn't he?
He does.
Like casual dating's fun, but if you want something serious, you got to put in the effort.
Exactly. And if you're serious about YouTube, then that's where that get smart level comes in.
Okay.
That's where you're starting to treat your channel like a business, thinking about your audience, thinking about your growth strategy, maybe even monetization.
Okay, so this is actually where his advice I thought was kind of surprising. He says, don't worry about finding a niche right away.
Yeah.
And, so many people you talk to about starting a YouTube channel, they're like, you got to niche down from day one.
Right.
He actually encourages starting broad.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to that experimentation phase, By casting a wider net, at first you're kind of figuring out, what do I actually enjoy creating? What's my audience responding to?
Yeah.
It's kind of like testing the waters before you dive in head first.
And plus, I feel like, if you're creating content that you're genuinely excited about,
Absolutely.
it just makes the whole process more enjoyable.
Oh, for sure.
And viewers pick up on that, like that enthusiasm kind of shines through.
100%. But, even if you love what you're doing, there's kind of this universal challenge that I think every YouTuber faces, and that's consistency.
Yes.
And Abdaal admits even he struggles with it sometimes.
Yeah, even with, millions of subscribers and a whole team behind him, he still talks about just the pressure to constantly be like churning out content week after week.
Yeah.
And it's kind of reassuring in a way to hear that, it's not just me.
Yeah. It's a muscle you got to train.
Yeah.
It's about setting realistic goals, planning ahead, and just accepting that, life is going to happen. Things are going to come up.
Right.
You're not always going to be able to stick to that perfect schedule.
Yeah. Okay, so brace yourself for this next piece of advice because it's a big one.
Okay.
Abdaal is a huge advocate for outsourcing your editing.
Oh, yeah. He is all about that.
And he even tells a story about meeting a business coach who kind of like really opened his eyes to the true value of his time.
Yeah, it was a turning point for him.
And he's very adamant about it. He's like, those hours that you're spending hunched over your computer, staring at your editing software, that might actually be costing you more than it would be to just hire an editor.
Yeah, you're losing money, potentially.
It's about looking at that big picture, isn't it?
Right. Instead of getting bogged down in those technical details, you can focus on what you do best, which is creating the content, connecting with your audience, growing your channel.
And he actually gives some numbers, right? Like he's like, basic editing, you can find someone for like $50 a video.
Yeah.
But, if you want someone really good, you're probably looking closer to $200-300.
At least.
And then he's not shy about saying what he pays now for top-tier editing.
Yeah. He puts it
like $1,300 a video.
I know. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. And before everyone freaks out, remember what we talked about earlier, that value of your time.
Exactly.
So, if you're making decent money from your channel already, that level of investment might make sense.
It might be worth it.
But if you're just starting out, there's no need to break the bank, right?
Yeah.
You can find talented editors at all price points.
For sure.
So it's about finding that balance that works for you and your budget.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about finding your niche. And remember how Abdaal was saying, like, Don't get too hung up on that at first.
Right.
But eventually you do want to kind of hone in on what are you really passionate about?
Yeah.
What really sets you apart?
What's your thing?
And that's where this concept of the unfair advantage comes in.
Yes.
So like he's encouraging you to ask yourself like, what am I naturally good at? What do people always come to me for advice on?
Right.
It's about identifying those things that give you an edge.
Yeah. Those unique experiences or skills that you bring to the table.
Yeah. And he even suggests asking friends and family,
Oh, that's a good idea.
like, what do you think I'm particularly good at? Because sometimes it's hard to see our own strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We can be our own worst critics.
Yeah.
So getting that outside perspective can be so valuable.
Yeah. And so once you've kind of identified those strengths, it's time to connect them to your one word,
Yes.
right? So what is that core concept or theme that you want to be known for on YouTube?
Like your brand.
It's like finding that sweet spot where your passion and your expertise and like what your audience is interested in
Yes.
all kind of intersect.
It all comes together.
Yeah, and it all ties back to Abdaal's really interesting point about the YouTube algorithm and how it's really just a reflection of your audience.
At the end of the day.
So instead of like trying to game the system, or chase trends, it's about creating content that genuinely serves your viewers.
Exactly.
So thinking about, what are their needs? What problems can you help them solve?
Yeah, what are they searching for?
What kind of content is really going to resonate with them?
It's about building a relationship with your audience, not just like racking up views.
Right.
And speaking of building relationships, Abdaal shares something really personal in his video.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier. His
Yeah.
mantra.
Yes, his mantra. He actually reads this before filming every single video.
Really?
He does. And it's not just like some cheesy affirmation.
Right.
It's a very like deeply personal statement of intention.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds him why he's creating content, who he's creating it for.
Okay, so what are some of the key points in that mantra? I'm actually really curious to hear like what he actually says.
Well, he starts out by acknowledging that he's not really concerned with the video's performance.
Oh, interesting.
So, meaning like the views, the likes, all that kind of stuff. He's more focused on just like sharing a message that he believes is worth sharing.
So it's about the impact that you want to make, not the vanity metrics.
Exactly.
I love that.
He also emphasizes authenticity. He says he wants to integrate his mind, his heart, and his soul into the video.
Wow.
So it's really about bringing your whole self to the process.
Yeah, not putting on a persona.
Right, exactly. Just like being genuine, being relatable, being human.
And I think viewers can sense that, right? Like that authenticity
Oh, yeah.
just builds that trust and connection.
100%.
And then he even reminds himself to enjoy the process and not take it too seriously.
have fun.
Yeah, we're just making YouTube videos after all.
Right.
Like a little lightness and humor goes a long way.
Absolutely. I needed to hear that.
Me too. It's easy to get caught up in all the pressure and forget to have fun.
Totally. And his mantra ends with this really powerful statement where he kind of acknowledges that, he's speaking to an individual who genuinely cares about what he has to say.
Oh, wow.
So it's a reminder to always keep your audience in mind.
That's a really beautiful way to frame it. It's not about you and your ego.
Right.
It's about serving your audience and providing value.
Exactly. And with that in mind, I think it's a good time to move on to the next part of our deep dive,
Let's do it.
where we'll explore some more of Abdaal's strategies for finding your unfair advantage
Okay.
and really understanding the true nature of the YouTube algorithm.
All right, stay tuned.
So, before the break, we were talking about this whole idea of outsourcing video editing.
Yeah, it's a game changer, right? Like it frees up so much time and energy.
Yeah, totally. But then the question becomes, okay, how do you actually find and hire an editor?
Yeah, that can feel kind of daunting.
Yeah, and Abdaal actually lays out a pretty straightforward process.
Okay.
He says, start with a clear job description, have a trial task,
Okay.
maybe have them edit the first minute of one of your videos.
Right. So you can kind of get a sense of their style, see if it's a good fit.
Exactly, like a mini audition before you commit.
Yeah, that's smart.
And then in terms of where to find editors, he actually suggests, if you already have an audience, tap into your network.
Right.
Put a call out on Instagram, Twitter, your YouTube community tab.
But what if you're like brand new to YouTube
Yeah.
and you don't really have a big audience yet? Where do you go then?
That's where those online freelance platforms come in handy.
Right.
Places like Upwork, Fiverr, even People Per Hour,
Okay.
which is actually where Abdaal found his first editor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he's very transparent about that whole journey,
He is.
which is great, for new creators to hear.
Totally. And he even talks about budgeting for an editor, you know?
Yeah, what does he say about that?
He's like, you can find someone for around $50 a video for a basic edit.
Okay.
But if you want someone really good, you're probably going to be paying closer to like, $200-$300.
At least, yeah.
And then he's like, I'm not shy about saying what I pay now for top tier editing.
Yeah, he puts it all out there.
$1,300 a video.
Whoa. Okay, so before anyone freaks out,
Right.
remember what we said earlier about the value of your time.
Exactly.
So if you're already making decent money from your channel, that level of investment might make sense.
Totally.
But, if you're just starting out, there's no need to break the bank.
Right. You can work your way up.
Yeah, you can find talented editors at all price points.
For sure.
It's about finding that balance that works for you.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about finding your niche.
Okay.
And remember how Abdaal says, don't get too hung up on this at first.
Right.
But eventually you do want to hone in on what are you truly passionate about?
What sets you apart?
And that's where this concept of the unfair advantage comes in.
Yes.
So he encourages you to ask yourself, what am I naturally good at? What do people always come to me for advice on?
Right. What are you the go-to person for?
It's about identifying those things that give you an edge.
Yeah, those unique experiences or skills that you bring to the table.
Yeah. And he even suggests, ask your friends and family.
No, that's a good idea.
What do you think I'm particularly good at? Because sometimes it's hard to see our own strengths.
No, absolutely. We can be our own worst critics.
Totally.
So getting that outside perspective can be so valuable.
And then once you've identified those strengths, it's time to connect them to your one word.
Yes.
Right? What is that core concept or theme that you want to be known for on YouTube?
Like your brand, essentially.
Right. And it's about finding that sweet spot where your passion and your expertise and what your audience is interested in.
Yeah, where it all overlaps.
All intersect.
It all comes together.
And this all ties back to Abdaal's really interesting point about the YouTube algorithm and how it's really just a reflection of your audience.
At the end of the day, that's what it is.
So instead of trying to game the system or chase trends,
Right.
it's about creating content that genuinely serves your viewers.
Exactly, meeting their needs.
So thinking about what are their needs? What problems can you help them solve?
Yeah. What are they searching for?
What kind of content's really going to resonate with them?
It's about building a relationship with your audience, not just racking up views.
Yeah, it's about connection.
Right. And speaking of building relationships, Abdaal shares something really personal in his video.
Oh, yeah.
His mantra.
You mentioned this earlier.
I did.
He actually reads this before filming every video.
Every single one, he says. And it's not just some cheesy affirmations. It's a very deeply personal statement of intention. It reminds him, why he's creating content, who he's creating it for.
So what are some of the key points in that mantra? I'm kind of curious what he actually says.
Well, he starts out by acknowledging that he's not really concerned with the video's performance.
Oh, that's interesting.
So meaning the views, the likes, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
He's more focused on just sharing a message that he believes is worth sharing.
So it's about the impact you want to make, not those vanity metrics.
Exactly. He also emphasizes authenticity. He says he wants to integrate his mind, heart, and soul into the video.
Wow.
So it's really about bringing your whole self to the process.
Yeah, not putting on a persona.
Right, being genuine, relatable, human.
Yeah, and I think viewers can sense that, right? That authenticity just builds trust.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then he reminds himself to enjoy the process.
Yes, have fun.
Don't take it too seriously.
We're just making YouTube videos after all.
Right, exactly. And the lightness and humor goes a long way.
Absolutely, I needed to hear that.
Me too.
And his mantra ends with this really powerful statement where he kind of acknowledges that, he's speaking to an individual who genuinely cares about what he has to say.
Oh, wow.
So it's this reminder to always keep your audience in mind.
It's such a beautiful way to frame it, right? It's not about you and your ego.
Right.
It's about serving your audience and providing value.
Exactly. And with that in mind, I think we can move on to the last part of our deep dive.
Okay, let's do it.
Where we're going to be exploring Abdaal's thoughts on, authenticity and finding your unique voice on YouTube.
Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Ali Abdaal's YouTube wisdom.
I know, it's gone by so fast.
We talked about everything from editing to finding your niche to like even his personal mantra.
Right, all the good stuff.
But there's this one big piece that we still need to unpack, and that's authenticity.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Abdaal actually shares a story about how early on in his YouTube journey, he tried to copy the style of another really popular YouTuber, Peter McKinnon.
Oh yeah, I remember him talking about that.
Yeah, he loved McKinnon's energy and personality, but when he tried to do it himself, it just felt like inauthentic.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap, right?
Yeah.
You see someone who's successful.
Oh, totally.
And you think, oh, I need to be just like that.
Yeah, you gotta have that energy. You gotta have that,
Yeah.
editing style.
Right, but it just ends up feeling so forced.
Exactly. And Abdaal realized that, trying to fit into someone else's mold was actually holding him back.
Yeah, so it's like giving himself permission to be himself.
Yes.
Quirks and all.
Exactly, like all the imperfections
Yeah.
that make him unique.
So it sounds like that kind of like failure to imitate McKinnon was actually what pushed him to find his own voice.
I think so. Yeah, like his own way of connecting with an audience.
And that ties back into like finding your one word,
Yeah.
right? That core concept that defines your channel.
Exactly, like that becomes your brand.
Think Ryan Holiday stoicism, James Clear habits. Like, what's your word?
It's a great question for everyone listening,
What's that one thing you're so passionate about?
Yeah.
You talk about it for hours.
What lights you up?
And it all comes back to, understanding the YouTube algorithm, which, like Abdaal keeps reminding us, is really just a reflection of your audience.
At the end of the day.
So instead of obsessing over keywords and analytics and all that stuff,
Right.
focus on serving your viewers.
Yeah.
Creating content that speaks to their needs,
Yeah.
solves their problems,
Gives them what they want.
keeps them coming back for more.
Yeah. Builds that loyalty.
And, it's about building those relationships, not just chasing views.
Exactly. Quality over quantity.
And, when you approach YouTube with that mindset, with that authenticity and genuine value, like, the algorithm's going to take care of itself.
Yeah, it's going to work itself out.
So it really sounds like Abdaal's whole approach is about aligning your actions with your values,
100%.
both in like how you create content and how you treat your audience.
Yeah, it's about walking the walk.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
You have. We really dug in.
We've explored Abdaal's strategies for, starting and growing a successful YouTube channel.
Hopefully gave you some actionable tips.
And yeah, hopefully everyone listening has picked up some valuable insights along the way.
There's no magic formula for overnight success.
Definitely not.
It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a willingness to experiment and, really find your own path.
Yeah, and the most important thing, I think, is to just get started.
Absolutely.
Take that first step, whether it's brainstorming video ideas, writing a script, or just hitting record and putting yourself out there.
Just do it.
And you know what, most importantly,
Yeah.
have fun with it.
Have fun.
Because when you're passionate about what you're doing, it just shines through.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it connects with your audience in a way that, like, nothing else can.
100%.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the YouTube playbook of Ali Abdaal.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it valuable and are feeling inspired to create something amazing.
Go make some awesome videos.
Until next time, happy YouTubing.